The Early Weigh-In podcast is back, and we're coming off a great week at UFC 256, up another 4.5 units. Man, had a ton of good reads. We said we were going to continue on track, and to be honest, man, a lot of agreeance is here again. I think the trend's going to continue here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was a big week for us last week, and it looks like the UFC is going to give us a treat to top off the year with a 15-fight card in this upcoming week. A lot of great fights, a lot of big names, and really there's not a fight on here that doesn't deliver. So I'm really excited for it.
This week is UFC Vegas 17. It's Wonderboy Thompson versus Geoff Neal, and like you talked about, man, from top to bottom, what a card to end the year on. But man, before we get started, I think there's something that you got to do.
Yes, for the second week in a row, my bet did not come in, and I have to hand Preston money again.
Thank you. No,
who was it? I forgot off the.
I can't even tell you anyway.
Damn, I remember.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But man, to go ahead and hop into these to get the night started, I think you're going to start this one off for us.
Yeah, so we start off in the 155-pound division with Rick Glenn, who's 21-6-1, versus Carlton Minus, who's only 10-2. A lot of unknowns in this one. Rick Glenn especially. He's coming off that 2.5-year layoff with a bunch of lingering injuries, some hip surgery, a lot of unknowns. And at 31 years old, you got to ask, he's over that 30-year mark. Just how long can his body hold up with these lingering injuries? At 6 foot tall at 155, he is kind of the taller, lengthier fighter. And I know last week, whenever we were breaking down the Gavin Tucker fight, that was somebody who we pointed to as being able to kind of handle an early pressure fighter and somebody who, brings the pace. Rick Glenn's able to utilize his body style to kind of keep the fight at the distance that he chooses to. Then moving over to Carlton Minus, he came to us from Alaskan FC, which we rag on quite a bit.
Right.
And rightfully so. Other than a couple of fighters like Euros Medic, there's a couple that are anomalies, but usually Alaskan FC doesn't produce the best fighters. He debuted in the UFC against Matthew Semmelsberger, where we lost. We had bet on Carlton Minus, thinking that Semmelsberger was a little too raw.
Right.
But he really showed us that he was the better fighter on that night, coming out with a decision victory. Minus, the only other fight that I can look to on his record that gives me any type of a tell is when he moved to PFL, which I'm currently repping right now, and fought Rick the Horror Story and got rear naked choked in the second round. That's the only other time that he's took a step up in competition, and he obviously didn't do too hot. So I think if the Rick Glenn that we know, that we've seen in the UFC before, comes out on Saturday, I think that he should get the win against Carlton Minus, but not a fight that I'm super confident on either way.
Me either, man. I'm glad they're getting this one out of the way right off the bat. It's definitely the worst of the 15, 14 fights we got going forward. But yeah, man, you talked about it. I did watch the James Lynch interview. A couple things I noted, man. So it's a 2-year layoff. He's no longer at Team Alpha Male anymore. You talked about the injuries and the surgeries. He's got another job now to make ends meet, and he's coming back, man, and at a minus 330 price tag. It's just not something I'm willing to touch. It almost makes me want to play Carlton Minus, but man, we got burnt on him once before, and he looked absolutely awful in the fight with Matthew Semmelsberger. And I think I think the resume probably is probably something that leads into that, because they just. It's carefully picked fights for them there in Alaskan FC, not the top level of competition. And when they kind of find guys they like, they just feed them cans to kind of boost that resume. And when they get them to the UFC, Jordan Wright, Carlton Minus, we've kind of seen it, take a turn for the worst. He does have pretty decent wrestling, I would say, and I think he probably needs to try to take Rick Glenn, put him up against the fence, try to work Rick Glenn's cardio, see how it is up a weight class after 2 years off. This guy cannot check leg kicks for nothing, and Rick Glenn throws a ton of kicks at you. And man, the Gavin Tucker win, it even looks even better now after the form Gavin Tucker's been in recently. We've seen Rick Glenn proven to beat UFC competition, so not highly confident by no means in a completely pass fight for me. But yeah, for the record, we're going to go with Rick Glenn.
Yeah.
And moving on to the next fight in the flyweight division, This is our fight that we're going to put the bet on again, man. It's Jimmy Flick, who's 15-5, fighting Cody Durden, who's 11-2-1. We just broke this fight down 2 weeks ago. You guys already know what side I'm on there. I've already replaced my bet on Cody Durden for the week. He got pulled because of pink eye, so it's nice to see that it wasn't any kind of weight issues to see him get back down to 125 for his first time in his career again. You got Jimmy Flick on the other side riding a 3-fight win streak coming off the Contender Series where he looked impressive against another dominant wrestler. He's got a ton of submission victories. He loves the head and arm choke. And when wrestlers get him on the mat, he really gives you a ton to think about. We have some MMA math here in the Chris Gutierrez fight. That's one of the 4 people who have finished Jimmy Flick on the feet, which you don't really like to see down there at flyweight. And we just saw Cody Durden in short notice look pretty impressive against him. We got the 10-8 first round and did get lose the next 2 and squeak out a draw there. But he's proven he can get in there with UFC competition. He moved for a couple weeks down to ATT in Florida there. Getting some good reps with, some very high-level fighters. This guy, I think he's better on the feet. I think he's got a good calf kick. I don't think he has to take this to the mat to use his wrestling to beat Jimmy Flick, to be honest with you. I think if he does, he really does have to be careful because Jimmy Flick, he does offer a lot to you on the mat and out of his guard and everything.
Yeah, so it seems like this fight, we picked it as our fight pick of the week because we agreed on so many other fights that this is just kind of the one that it fell on.
Right.
And if you were to ask me last week who I was on, Durden or Flick, we almost played a Durden bet. Like we were both on the Durden side. And just as the week kind of moved on, I kind of see how Flick might be the more experienced. I think that his path to victory is a little bit clearer than Durden's is. Durden, he is a well-rounded fighter with 10 of his 11 wins by finish, and of those 10 wins, 5 by KO and 5 by submission. So he doesn't have a go-to method of victory, and that's something that I like to see in a fighter. But I also I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to avoid the ground game for as long as he needs to beat Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick, 13 of his 15 wins by submission, and it's no mystery where he wants this fight to go. That being said, he's not completely lost on the feet. Like, I have seen him improve his striking and utilize striking to get the fight to the mat. So I don't think that he's going to be stuck out in the middle of the ocean if he is on the feet, but I don't think that this is where he wants to keep that fight. You're right. As far as MMA math goes, Durden looks like he should be winning. Odds makers are on the Flick side. I know he opened as the favorite and is currently sitting on the minus 147. I think that these odds are right where they need to be. Like I said, I think the easier path to victory is on the Flick side, and that's why I've switched since initially breaking down this fight. In his win on the Contender Series over the at the time undefeated Nate Smith, really he looked like a class act. He looked like he knew what he was doing, and I do think that although it's almost insignificant the amount of fights that he has more than Durden, I just think that the experience inside the cage will be the determining factor in giving Flick the victory.
So not many throughout the night that we disagree on there, but one right off the bat, and I know that's what makes it interesting come Saturday.
Moving forward, we go to the middleweight division with Tafon, Dadan, Nchukwi at 4-0 versus Jamie the Nightwolf Pickett at 11-4. Nchukwi, his record at 4-0 is a little misleading. He does have a 7-0 amateur record, which isn't much, but it does at least put him into the double digits of MMA fights. All of those fights, except for one, is a first or second round KO. And that kind of worries me. If the low count for his record is already like kind of worrisome enough, all of them being in first or second round KO is even more worrisome because you don't know what he looks like outside of that second round. He was able to get the third round KO in one of his other matches, but against upper echelon competition, how is he going to look whenever that gas tank depletes? He's built like
A brick shit house.
Yeah, a brick shit house. Almost exactly like one of his wins that he has over William Knight, a guy who we've seen in the UFC and actually have success in the UFC. But they're built almost the same. He was kind of lucky to, at 205 pounds, fight somebody with a similar body style to him, because that's not going to be the case. So I am kind of happy that he's moved down to 185.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm not sure how easy of a weight cut it's going to be for a guy who's 95% muscle.
Right.
One of the things that I noticed watching tape study about him is he's kind of like the male version of Chukagian or Waterson. He kind of has that like
the grunt in every shot.
Every single shot. So, maybe if it does go to decision, that is something that'll weigh in on the judges' scorecards. He 4-0 professionally. He has very powerful shots, but with those power shots, he also has patience and shot selection, which I was actually really impressed by. I think it was the Contender Series, the head kick he got over Al.
I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, I can't pronounce that last name, but Al. He got that head kick KO, and leading up into it, he didn't exert himself,
right.
And that's something that I was really expecting, especially from that body style. And then moving over to the other side, Jamie Pickett. Maybe one of the best bodies in MMA I've ever seen. Like, if I could, on UFC, create a fighter, I would give him Jamie Pickett's body. I mean, he's 90% arms and legs, and at 6'2", and 80-inch reach. This is somebody who could be the kryptonite to Tefon and Chukwi, Right. We just don't know. I will say that odds makers definitely have Chukwi taken this relatively easily, sitting at a minus 285.
Right.
But Jamie Pickett, his losses, they're coming to... Charles Bird, who's a UFC caliber talent, Punel Soriani, who was 7-0 at the time. Both guys who are
experienced, got UFC wins.
Everything. So, and that was his only 2 losses since 2016, and those are the only ones I'm really going to take into account. Another thing that working for Jamie Pickett is he's never been KO'd. He's been on the Contender Series 3 times and lost 2 of them. But he just, sometimes he's gotten outclassed before, and it's something that I've seen him like progress in his MMA career. He's still green himself, and even though he is 32 years old, I really do I think that he's finally coming into that experience level he needs to kind of utilize his physical advantages the right way to find success in MMA.
Yeah, man. And so I know I was texting you earlier in the week and stuff because these odds they're wide to me, man. They really are. But it's a fight. I'm absolutely looking forward to this one. I will. I'll be surprised if someone isn't finished in this fight. Both of these guys are very, very green. Usually when you see that, you see guys coming forward and throwing at each other. Tefon, man, he's, like you said, patient with his shots. Every time you take a step forward, whether it's a leg kick, a body shot, he's going to make you pay with something. Jamie Pickett, on the other hand, doesn't really have the best striking defense. It's a little bit tall man style. That being said, he's never been knocked out, man, and he is going to be the bigger guy in here as far as, I feel like presence. Tefon coming down from heavyweight and stuff, he's thick and compact, but when you square these guys off, I think Jamie Pickett is actually gonna hold his own in those size offs, man. With Tefon, I'm just super worried, man, about it getting past that first round and some of that volume really, causing a toll on him. He has not been tested yet. Jamie Pickett is more experienced. His losses come to Soriano and Bird, who have proven they can get wins in the UFC. The Pickett by decision is plus 550. The over 1.5 is minus 110. Tefon has been within 15 seconds of the over 1.5 and 2 of his 4 wins, and Jamie Pickett has seen the scorecards plenty of times, so I don't even think the over 1.5 is a stretch here. I think Jamie Pickett being a little bit bigger, a little bit more experienced, if he can get in there and avoid the shots for the first round in 2 minutes, man, I think the longer this fight stretches out, the more I favor Jamie Pickett. Tefon looks good at 26. I think he's found the weight class he should be at. Man, I don't know who I'm going to pick, but gun to the head, man. Give me Jamie Pickett on Saturday, man. I like it. Give me the big dog.
I don't mind it. I think I think Pickett, his path to victory is that decision prop like you talked about. That being said, I'm still going to go with Nchukwi. I think that he just is too big, too powerful, and other than that green record, a lot of things point to him getting the victory.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's it's going to be a killer fight on Saturday. Moving on, man. A couple weight classes down in our bantamweight division, we have Draco Rodriguez, who's 7-1, fighting Ayman Zahabi, who is 7-2, and Draco's a guy that I told you I like a whole lot at 135, man. This guy has great skills. He's got good size, and personally, I think the UFC sees the same thing that I do. He's coming off a fight in August on the Contender Series where he looked really, really good. This guy's got a 12-0 amateur record, so he's very experienced. In those 20 fights with amateur in his pro record, he's seen the judges' scorecard only like 3 times. Been in there with UFC caliber competition, even though it didn't really go his way in there before. But what I was saying about I think the UFC sees it too, man, is they're pairing him up with Ayman Zahabi, who's on a 2-fight losing streak, coming off a pretty good layoff. He's lost both his UFC fights. He's much older as well, man, and I think he's fighting for his walking papers here. And I think this is a perfect setup match for Draco Rodriguez. Ayman is the younger brother there. Firas Zahabi was a longtime trainer of GSP, trains out of TriStar MMA, and he's a very technical striker. And he's dangerous in round 1, but the resume is very, very weak for who he's been in there with, and it showed when he got to the UFC. When just did not look good. He got knocked out, and then lost a very unanimous decision to Vince Morales, who is borderline UFC caliber himself. I don't like laying the chalk at -190, -200 on a guy who's a UFC newcomer, but I had him parlayed with Bilal, and with that fight pulling out, it looks like I've got a straight bet on Draco Rodriguez come Saturday. I don't necessarily mind it. I think he has potential to come out here and look like the -200, but there's a couple prop lines that we are extremely interested in this fight.
For sure. So Ayman Zahabi, he's kind of one of those guys where coming into the UFC, not a lot of experience outside of that first round. 6 of his 7 wins coming by first round finish, and it's just kind of one of those he finally gets the upper echelon competition. His best win is to 13-4 Reginaldo Vieira, and that was his only decision out of his wins. Then he fights 2 more UFC caliber opponents in Ricardo Ramos with the spinning back elbows that were just awful, and then Vince Morales, which kind of it deuced on him. He really did. And so now it's like he has the Zahabi last name. Is he going to live up to it? Because as of right now, he just hasn't. Add on another 1.5 year layoff after 30 years old. He's 33 right now. I just don't like it. Those are not things that point me into picking you as the fighter on any given night. Draco Rodriguez, kind of in a similar boat where almost all of his wins are by first or second round finish. But, you mentioned his amateur fight record of the 12 or 13 fights. I mean, that's significant, especially in the fight game. Like, that's a little bit more than I'd like for you to have as an amateur. It seems like it might be time to move up to pro, especially if you're whooping everybody's ass. So I'm not so sure about that, but a fast starter. And as I looked through his record, he's fought all the way up at lightweight and has wins. So, I think that he's going to come in here as the bigger man, the younger man. And, man, I have him getting this done relatively easily. And like you said, it's kind of tough banking on somebody who's making their UFC debut. But it is very likely that Rodriguez comes out there and shows that he should be the -180 or better.
And go ahead and tell them about those props you came in here talking about.
Yeah, so the biggest prop was, I've already mentioned all the first round finishes from both these guys. Well, Zahabi Rodriguez under 1.5 is +300, and under 2.5 is +185. Those are both ones that we're looking to make some pretty decent stabs at, and I think they could really make us some money come Saturday.
Absolutely. I know the under 2.5 definitely being one of the bigger plays of the night for us. And looks like I got Draco straight up, but not unhappy about that. I think we both agree Draco comes out here and gets the job done.
Agreed. All right, moving on, we go to the middleweight division where we see Antonio Arroyo, who's 9-3, versus Duran Win, who's 6-2. So Antonio Arroyo, he's the two-time Contender Series alumni. He was originally scheduled to fight last month, but after 2 different opponent changes, they had to rebook him. So he's been in fight-ready shape for quite a while now. When I did his tape study, he has the ability to switch stances, and he really utilizes a kicking heavy game. I mean, whether it's the left body kicks or leg kicks or high kicks, I mean, from both stances, he's powerful and dangerous. But it's almost like Yair Rodriguez, where he really, really relies on that kicking game. A little bit less flashy than Yair, but utilizes the kicks just as much. Right. He is coming off of the debut against Andre Muniz in 2019, and this is his first time back since then. So I am curious to see if he's made any of those adjustments after the Muniz loss. Now Duran Win, he came into the UFC at 5-0, and a lot of people were backing him really, really hard. Right. He's the mini DC. He's the next big thing. It just hasn't worked out for him like that so far. He debuted against Eric Spicely, where he set a middleweight record in significant strikes landed, and that's something noteworthy for sure. But you're fighting Eric Spicely, so I hope you have a good performance against him. He also, and even though he had a good performance against Spicely, he showed some glaring holes in his game. At 5'6", he just gives up too much size, and it's not the same as Daniel, like we talked about this, it's not the same as Daniel Cormier giving up size in the light heavyweight division, because he's still a 5'10", 5'11", full size man. Where Duran Win, at 5'6", that's short enough to where you give up significant advantages just as a human being at 5'6". So we see his susceptibility to knees in the clinch, and that being what I think could be the factor in this fight with Arroyo is his ability to clinch up, and just being at 6'3" and his legs being as long as they are, it's not going to take much for him to get that knee up to the chin. Duran Win has one of the best chins I've ever seen. Before he got finished in that Gerald Meerschaert fight and in the Eric Spicely fight, dude can take shots, and that's something that I was really, really impressed with. At least if he's going to have these physical disadvantages, at least be able to take some shots, and that's what he gives you. So I like that he's a multinational wrestling champion. I like that his fight style is to get on the inside and rip to the body and throw some powerful shots. But he has to get in range with Arroyo. Arroyo, even though he's 7 inches taller, he only has about a 3-inch reach advantage, which isn't that significant. And with Duran Win being able to kind of fall back on his wrestling ability, I do see him, even as an underdog, getting this victory. I'm not confident at all. This is probably my least confident pick, but I do see Duran Win winning.
So yeah, man, I'm on the opposite side again. I actually bet Antonio Arroyo in his fight against Eric Anders before that got pulled out. And I've actually, already bet him again here, man. And at a minus 143, what I got him at, he's now sitting in the minus 160 range. So I've beaten the line. I've done my job there, man. I just need Antonio to do his on Saturday. And like you talked about, the kicking heavy approach, it's tricky to use that against a wrestler.
Right.
It is. But it comes to a point where you're talking about, man, at 5'6" in the middleweight division, at a catch weight of 195 pounds, you're at a serious physical disadvantage. And yes, you can call him the mini DC. Yes, he's a national champion wrestler. He's not an Olympic level wrestler, and he has not been training for the years DC has at the highest level with Velasquez and people in their prime around him like DC has. And I think it's evident, man. He's not been able to get much going in the UFC for him. He's gotten a pretty late start to his UFC career, already 31 years old with only 8 pro fights. Man, it's the biggest question of is, will he be able to hold Arroyo down? Do I think he can probably get him down? Yeah, but he's going to be giving up a ton of size advantage. and it's exhausting holding big guys down like that. And I think we've seen cardio be a little bit of an issue for Deron Winn. His boxing is pretty basic, but you can say the same for DC. It's a lot of pumping jabs, right hand over the top. But man, his speed on his hands are unreal. It's like DC, and I think Deron Winn, yes. I think there are winnable fights in the UFC for him. I do, but I think he's given up too much against a guy that I think has a much higher ceiling than he does. He throws great combinations, which, now you're getting a guy much younger, much shorter in stature. So I'm sure you don't have too many good looks in training with people that small as well. So I wonder how good his hands are going to be. He has 2 losses by subs, but they are 2 guys who were legit middleweights, and Andre Muniz, who was like 6'1" himself, and much more powerful than Deron Winn. When you look at this on paper and you see a guy who's got a 3 to 4 inch reach advantage and an 8 inch height difference in the same division at a minus 143, it's hard for me not to bet it. That being said, when I look at the fighters, I think the ceiling's higher on Antonio Arroyo. I think he has more to offer in the UFC, so I think it was a smart bet on my part. But I don't mind Deron Winn by no means. I think it's just a terrible matchup for him.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of reiterating what we both said already, but Deron Winn at 5'6", that's short for the 135-pound division. Now we're moving up into 205 and 185, and you're not going to find much success at that stature. And then Antonio Arroyo's side, the way I'm looking at it, don't play the kicking game with a wrestler.
Right.
And that's just how I look at it. It's hard to get past it, even though there's some size discrepancies for sure. If Arroyo keeps utilizing the kick game like he has and keeps it above calf kicks, he's going to pay for it in Deron Winn. Now, Deron Winn, so far in his UFC career, hasn't shown that he wants to take somebody down and hold him there, which is kind of disappointing because I'd like to see if he even has the ability to. But this would be the fight to where he is going to finally do it and show us that wrestling skill that he has. Like he does trips, he does he'll catch a kick and kind of trip you, but I've just never seen him follow it up with good ground and pound or control.
And I think this is the fight where he most definitely needs to show it, because between his 3 UFC opponents that he's fought so far, this guy is the most dangerous on the feet for
100%.
sure. I think we do get to see Deron Winn wrestle a whole bunch on Saturday, and Antonio Arroyo, man, after Muniz was wrestling him a whole bunch, he carries a lot of muscle, man, and it is at 195 for him. He did cut weight 2 weeks ago for the Eric Anders fight, so that is something to look out for. At the minus 167, I think is what I saw him at now or something. I probably wouldn't play Arroyo, but the minus 140, I think it was worth a small little bet there. And then staying in our middleweight division, we have Karl Roberson, who's 9-3, fighting Dalch Lungiambula, who's 10-2, and I think this fight is going to be a good one, man. Both of the guys are really good on the feet. They're both great kickboxers. The kickboxing record and background going a little bit further back there for Karl Roberson. He has tested positive for COVID, so his fight, getting pushed back and stuff. We always wonder how it affected people. We brought it up last podcast, and we saw Kevin Holland come out there and look pretty good.
And I did hear on I think it was another James Lynch interview with Roberson that he was asymptomatic for his COVID.
That's good, and that's good to hear. So hopefully, doesn't take a hit to his performance at all. He trains a lot, main sparring partner with Corey Anderson. So, as an extensive kickboxer, you know where his holes are, and it's in the wrestling game. So it is nice to see him, with a high level wrestler up, fighting at light heavyweight. He's getting good looks in the wrestling game. That being said, man, it's shown time and time again, whether it be the Glover fight, the Vettori fight, it's the grappling exchanges that tire this guy out. He can sit there and strike with you all day in your Wellington Tournament fight. He had good cardio going into that third round, and I think it was a late flurry in the third round that actually stole him that fight and everything. He was having good output. And then you go, like I said, you go to the Vettori and the Glover fight, and man, some of those grappling exchanges really, really gas him out. Dalch on the other side, man, he's heavy on top. He's got good clinch and good takedowns. But man, he's 35 and he's coming down to middleweight for the very first time, coming off a year layoff, and another one of those, not so much Deron Winn, but at 5'8", in the middleweight division, I think you're going to run into those tall, lengthy guys like Karl Roberson, who are good kickboxers and are going to be able to pitch, just piece you apart for the whole third round. we've seen Karl Roberson have some, issues on the scale and stuff like that. I think that Marvin Vettori fight fell off like twice because Roberson was missing weight and stuff. So, if he shows up, makes weight, I think he actually gets it done inside the distance. It might be something I look at playing. Both guys struggle with guys who can get them down to the mat and hold them there and submit them, but neither one of those guys I think are going to come in with that kind of game plan. I think it's going to be a striking heavy battle from the both of them. I lean toward Karl Roberson there.
Yeah, so you mentioned Lungiambula. This is his first time cutting down to middleweight. That's something that really, there's a lot of unknowns coming into that. He packs, he probably is definitely on par with Tefon and Chukwi as far as muscle.
Right.
And at only 5'8", it's kind of crazy to think that he was in the heavyweight division knocking people out. And so that's something that is working in his favor. His athleticism, his strength, those are things that I don't know if there's anybody in the UFC that's going to have better athleticism or better strength or physical ability than Lungiambula. That being said, it's kind of hard to bank on somebody off of pure athleticism. That's like banking on Johnny Walker, banking on, you name it. We've seen a lot of guys who are big muscle, and that's kind of like their path to victory. It's just being the bigger, stronger brute of a man. And I think that he's going to run into some problems. We've already seen it in his last time out against Magomed Ankalaev. I will say, anybody coming into their second UFC fight against Magomed Ankalaev is not going to look great.
Right.
I think that dude's one of the futures of the light heavyweight division, so I'm not like just crapping on him because of that. But we see another guy in Karl Roberson who is, a lengthier, taller fighter at 6'1" and has the veteran experience in the UFC. He's fought the Marvin Vettoris, the Glovers, the Marshman, Turman, and he's seen a lot of different opponents and kind of had to go past that. The kind of like
he's beaten. He's beaten better guys than the Daquan Townsend. He's hit that next level of fighters.
Kind of had that UFC experience that he needs to kind of like face adversity and then come back from it. Karl Roberson, he kind of is, I guess. He has the. Here's what I'm getting at. I guess he has all of the tools to beat Lungiambula, and if Lungiambula does slow down, I see Karl Roberson kind of taking control of this relatively easy. I think that the minus 250 price tag or better is a little skewed. I think I'd like to see him at a minus 200, but I do think that he is the side that I would be going with in this fight for sure. Yeah,
I'm with you, man. The longer it goes, if you can see Dalch implement some of the judo background and some of the trips and try to get this to the mat, if he gets on top, man, he's a hard guy to get off of you. And like I said, you've seen Roberson slow down in those grappling exchanges, but I do think this is a kickboxing battle. And at 35 years old, making your first trip down to middleweight, the scales might be an issue and everything. So, man, I think Karl Roberson is the A side of this one. I think he's going to win. But at the present moment, man, no bet on this one for me.
Yeah, it's a pass for me as well. So moving on, we go to the 135-pound weight class with Pannie Kianzad, who's 13-5, and Preston's favorite fighter, Sijara Eubanks, who's 6-5. Pannie, she's on the 2-fight winning streak, one against Betch Correa, and one the second time that she's beaten Jessica Rose Clark. Pannie Kianzad, she's kind of been disappointing, I guess, in the UFC. Whenever she fought Julia Villa, it was a tough loss for sure. And she's since bounced back, but hasn't looked excellent in her wins. Nothing about that says dominant to me, and I think that that's going to be the story of her career. We've got a women's fighter where 12 of 13 of her wins are by decision, and you're just not going to see just outright dominant performances from her. Pannie, that being said, she's kind of seen that upper echelon of competition from her third fight as a professional. She was fighting Lena Landsberg, and has since fought people like Macy Chassian in the Ultimate Fighter finale, Tanya Evinger, Sarah Kaufman, Jessica Rose Clark 2 times, like I said. And then moving on to Sijara Eubanks with a 6-5 record, it's also kind of misleading because she is a little bit better than that record would say, because she kind of stepped in there with the upper echelon of the women's MMA right off the bat. Yeah. Right. So here's something that we kind of talked about beforehand. Sijara Eubanks, she's coming off of the Caitlin Vera loss, and then the fight before that, she had a win over Julia Villa, which is a really big upset. Mm-hmm. I think that if the Julia Villa fight would have never happened, and all we were seeing was the Betch Correa loss to the Sarah Morris win to the Caitlin Vieira loss, we'd see a Pannie Kianzad at, a minus. The odds would be flipped or worse in Pannie Kianzad's favor. Now, we see. Now, I think that's kind of what's clouding the judgment of the odds makers, because Eubanks was able to go out there and beat Julia Villa. MMA math suggests that Sijara Eubanks should win this pretty easily. Mm-hmm. I don't see that happening. I think that Pannie has seen the better competition. I think that she's got the tools. Neither one of these girls are super impressive to me. That's the main thing that I'm getting here. But if I'm going to lean towards one, I'll go towards Pannie because of Sijara Eubanks' inconsistency as an MMA fighter.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I know it's not like a good bet, one that I can back, but I want to bet Pannie so bad, and it's more of my dislike for Sijara, man. That's just a girl that I look to fade. We did bet Pannie in her last fight against Betch. And cashed on that one, but you speak of MMA math, it's like that just defines this fight in my opinion, with Sijara beating Betch, or losing to Betch, who Pannie's beaten, and then you've got Pannie losing to Avila, who Sarge's beaten. It, man, that just defines this fight in my opinion, and it's why I'm staying away from it. Pannie does get drawn into some dangerous, wild exchanges on the feet. She's not that technical, but I do give her the advantage here on the feet, and I think she has a better cardio as well. Sarge is coming in on her fourth fight for 2020, and you're right, man. That was a huge upset against Julia Villa. Nobody expected her to look that good. I think she's like a 3-1 dog. Mm-hmm. She is now fighting at 135, and that's just not the weight class for her, to be honest with you, man. She is like I kind of shit on Calvillo there. Calvillo, she's a strawweight who can't get the weight and nutrition under control and has to fight at 125. At 35 years old, Sarge is a girl who should be fighting at 125, who just can't seem to make the scales work in her favor. Mm-hmm. She is a no-gi champion. She is very, very heavy on top. She's a hard girl to get off you. But what Sarge does rather well is her MMA takedowns. They're not bad. You don't see her struggling to get the fight to the mat. She has good wrestling entries to get the fight to the mat and get her jiu-jitsu going. I think with her getting up there in age, man, Pannie having a little 3-inch reach advantage, 3-inch height advantage on her, I think she's going to look better on the feet. And I think if she can just stuff 1 or 2 takedowns to discourage Eubanks at the beginning of that fight, I think Pannie will start taking over on the feet. I'm going to lean with the underdog in Pannie Kianzad. Probably not something I'm going to even think about playing, though.
Me either.
Man, moving on to our prelim main event. We're finally through our prelims. This takes place in our welterweight division, and we have the veteran Anthony Pettis, who was 23-10, taking on Alex Morono, who was 18-6. At first glance, I thought Pettis was just going to take it. I started digging into it a little deeper. I didn't get as confident just because with the form that we've seen, Pettis in as of late. Then I just started looking at tape of Morono, man, and he doesn't really impress me that much. I said it flies under the radar, his 7-3 UFC record, but it's against Keenan Song, Zach Otto, Max Griffin one's a good one. But then you got Reese McKee, typically a lightweight before making the move to welterweight and stuff. Man, Alex Morono's just not even remotely been in there with near the competition that Anthony Pettis has been in. Yes, Anthony Pettis was once 17-2, and now he's 23-10. But it has been in there with just absolute killers. Yes, he's moved from lightweight and welterweight. It's the most dangerous 2 divisions in the UFC that have, they've been the deepest for the past couple years, and we've seen Pettis just fight contender after contender after contender. I think the first round is super, super important for Anthony Pettis because he's a guy that gets his confidence broken easily. He needs to go out there and get his footwork, get his striking flowing in that first round. I think if he goes out there and has a good round 1 against Alex Morono, I think the next 2 and 3 look relatively the same. On the other side, Alex Morono's a black belt, and you don't really see him take that many fights to the ground and use that black belt. He likes to stand up and get in brawls, man. And I just don't see him outstriking the longtime vet here in Anthony Pettis. He trains out of Fortis MMA. There's a ton of fighters to help you in that camp. And I'm going to mention this again in the main event. Fortis has a ton of grapplers. Fortis does not prepare you for a very high-level striker. And Anthony Pettis is a high-level striker, one that I think is much better than Morono, seen a side of the game Morono hasn't seen. At a minus 230 or whatever it is, I don't want to play it. But inside the distance for Pettis is plus 250, and I think he has potential to go out here as a vet and just show Morono what's up.
Yeah, so that was something that I'd been on earlier in the week, is the Pettis inside the distance. I think that might be the play because you're right, at minus 224, it's just tough to kind of bank on somebody who's kind of shown those inconsistencies over his career, especially towards this later half of his MMA career. You know, he's only 33 years old, but that's a hardened 33 years old. You know, 23 and 10, I'd guarantee over half of those are in the UFC. So
yeah, without a doubt.
You know, in his most recent bout, he comes off the decision win over Donald Cerrone. That was a pretty good performance.
One that we bet Donald in.
Yeah, one that we lost some money in for sure. But the two before that, the one against Diego Ferreira, you know, if you're going to lose to Ferreira, lose by submission, and that's what happened. Don't lose to Nate Diaz. That's kind of that's one that I cannot get over. It's like,
he was drowned. The confidence was broken.
Yeah, I don't, and even I kind of, when you talk about the confidence being broken, another fight that I kind of saw that in was the Tony Ferguson one. Yep. You know, he had some early success dropping Tony, and then kind of felt that heat, felt the pressure that Tony puts on you, and went out of there with a broken hand. But I've seen plenty of fighters fight through a broken hand. Like this past weekend, Cub Swanson broke his hand in the first round and still won.
Got to finish.
Yeah, so that's something I just don't like seeing in Pettis, especially, you know, in his last 7, he's 3-4, and it's just one that, or it's just losses that are tough to look past. One of his wins being to the guy in the main event tonight, Stephen Thompson. We actually got to see that in UFC Nashville. That's something where you can't ever count out somebody like Anthony Pettis. You know, I think that Stephen Thompson 9 out of 10 times wins that fight, but that night Anthony Pettis was the better guy. So props to him. You know, it just proves that, you know, Showtime is still around. It comes every once in a while, not just every night. So Morono, you know, you talked about his kind of, you can consider him a vet to me. If you have over 10 fights in the UFC, you're a veteran to me. So I don't think that Morono is a bad fighter by any means. I do think that this will probably be the biggest fight of his career. Yeah. I think that Alex Morono has a tendency to stay flat-footed whenever he fights, and that's something that's kind of gotten him caught in the past. In his last decision win over Reese McKee, you know, he whooped the shit out of Reese McKee, but he also took some pretty significant shots. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that we had like the under 2.5 on that, and we were hoping that Reese McKee was going to get out of there, but Morono just could not find that finishing shot. And like I said, it got to the point where Reese McKee was able to kind of take so much punishment that he figured out how he was getting the punishment dealt to him and was able to kind of find some holes in Morono's game. Morono is equally as inconsistent as Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis has the far superior tools and the experience that I think is gonna get him the win in this scenario. So I'll go with Anthony Pettis. And even though we're not officially going to be playing the Pettis inside the distance, that's one that we both might, you know, play personally or might end up agreeing on and playing as a podcast pick. But as of right now, I think that we've just kind of laid off this fight.
Yeah, man. It's a tricky one. I know possibly Pettis in a parlay we've talked about, but it's tricky, man. Like you talk about the Pettis of late, it's not been the form that you like to see when you want to bet on those guys. But when you look at just who he's fought and who he's been in there with in the octagon with, That weighs a ton to me, and I think Pettis gets it done.
I like it. To kick off the main card, we go to the heavyweight division where we see Marcin Tybura, who's 20-6, face the Prince of War, Greg Hardy, who's 7-2. Marcin Tybura, he came to us from M1 Global into the UFC, and he's now a 12-fight UFC veteran. In his career, he's kind of had some ups and downs in the UFC, for sure. He's been finished 3 times already in the UFC, but has like quite a few victories, and as of right now is riding a 3-fight win streak in 2020 alone, which I really do think says a lot about his current style of fighting. You know, whenever he was originally getting into the UFC, I think that he was kind of looking for those finishes, those bonuses, and I think he's at a point where he's much more worried about just getting the win by any means necessary, even if that means making a boring fight or having a grinding fight on somebody. And that's kind of something that I do like about Tybura, is that he's no longer doing this for the fans. He's doing it for himself. And I think that that's how a lot of fighters should be fighting, you know, especially today with the unforgiving environment that the UFC kind of brings. You know, you've got to look out for yourself. And I finally think that we're seeing that with Tybura here. But he's 35 now. So even though it is at heavyweight, and that's the weight class where you are able to get away with that, especially that age creeping up on you, I do think that it's a little bit late in the game for Marcin Tybura to actually make a significant push in the heavyweight division. Greg Hardy, you know, whether it's controversy outside of the octagon or inside of the octagon, it is constantly following him. He cannot get away from it. And, you know, I don't mean to go off on a spiel right here, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't look for people who punch other people in the face to be role models for me. You know, I don't care about Greg Hardy's out of competition life. I really don't. I look at somebody who's a 6'5", 80.5-inch reach NFL athlete. You know, somebody who truly might be one of the best athletes on the UFC roster right now, and we see him tipping the scales at 265 pounds. You know, he's an absolute monster. He's riding this 2-fight win streak, one over Jorgen De Castro and one over Maurice Green, where we actually cashed on him winning by TKO. I think that was an excellent bet, and it almost happened in the first round. It just so happened he got it in the second round. Greg Hardy, you know, he is as green as it gets, especially as a heavyweight fighter. Whenever he fought Volkov, that was in Moscow, like we said. It was on short notice. He stepped in for JDS. And he was only 5-1 at the time. And he was able to go to decision with Alexander Volkov, who was 30-7 and had as much experience you could ask for in the UFC. Greg Hardy is the man, you know? And I really like just a straight bet right here. I think that he's got the physical advantage over anybody in that division, and throw in that he's now a product of Team Tyson, and he'll be working directly with Mike Tyson's head coach Billy White to start implementing this boxing approach into his game. Man, I'm all over Greg Hardy here. I think that's the play of the night for me.
Absolutely, man. I know both of us have already locked in a bet on Greg Hardy like -110, because we do not see that going in our favor. That is without a doubt going to be the bet that we release for you guys. That being said, man, I want to talk about Marcin Tybura for a little bit, because I do see good things in him and stuff. He is riding the 3-fight win streak of 2020, and he gives Hardy more to think about in terms of an overall game. You see Tybura mixing his takedowns very, very well late in the round, or when they're needed, when the striking gets dangerous. And you've not seen Greg Hardy run into a guy who's going to shoot the takedown the way Marcin Tybura is. He's heavy on top. He's got good ground and pound. And you touched him, man. He doesn't mind seeing the judges' scorecards anymore. He came in with the 2 knockouts in the UFC, gained a ton of steam. And since that, he's seen the judges' scorecard in 6 of his last 9 fights, all 6 being wins, the other 3 being losses. So Marcin Tybura tends to, if this goes to decision, he tends to do enough to get it done, and it's because of the takedowns that he mixes in very well. We have seen, big power cause this guy issues on the feet. And, man, that's something Greg Hardy's going to bring at you, man. He's going to have a ton of more speed. Yeah, I don't even have to touch on the athleticism. Man, this guy is an NFL player, a Pro Bowler. Like, it is athletic as it comes in the UFC, in my opinion. And he's going to be able to land that shot. He's got the length, the reach advantage, the power advantage, and he's becoming more patient, ready to pick his shots. He's had 8 fights in the last 2 years. And man, without the inhaler and the illegal knee on Alan Crowder, you can argue that he is 6-1 in the UFC with the lone loss coming to Volkov. Dude, Volkov has put out Fabricio Verdum. You saw what he just did to Walt Harris. And Greg Hardy can go short notice 5 rounds with you in Moscow. Man, the ceiling is through the roof. This guy makes extreme improvements fight to fight to fight. He's in one of the absolute best camps in the game, where he has a ton of good looks, where some heavyweights. Oh, man, I really like him. 32 years old, I wish he would have got the ball rolling a little bit more. I wish he would have found MMA a little bit early.
At least it's in the forgiving division of
Exactly,
heavyweights.
that's what I was about to say. But at the same time, man, there's not many guys that are going to put in front of him going forward that are going to be any younger than he is.
There's really only a couple of matchups that I don't like for Greg Hardy in the heavyweight division, and that's the Tom Aspinalls, the Cyril Gons, Curtis Blades, Stipe, and then outside of that, there's not very many people. I think he beats the Derek Lewises. I think he beats the JDSs. I think
look how good Volkov looked against Derek Lewis until making a mistake in the last 30 seconds.
Right,
Volkov is absolutely legit. He held the belt for a while. I just don't want Greg Hardy to get frustrated in there if he can't get Marcin Tybura out of there, because Tybura's a tough guy who knows how to work the scorecards well. Mm-hmm. I think Greg Hardy might have to be okay with going to a decision in this one. I think he'll do enough to win a couple of these rounds, though. Stuff 1 or 2 of these takedowns. I think the right hand will start landing. It's power these heavyweights don't understand, man. And I really do think if he lands a good one, if he can get some of these combinations working, seeing the improvements in the striking game, I don't know if he's going to get Marcin Tybura out of there, but without a doubt, I got Greg Hardy to win.
Right, and just kind of touching on those 2 losses that Tybura has most recently in the Augusto Sakai and the Shamil Abdurahimov.
However you say it.
Yeah, those are 2 guys who, like you said, have that punching power, but I don't think hold a torch to Greg Hardy as far as his punching power. So I couldn't agree with you more. This is a straight pick for us, and I think we're going to hop on it pretty soon.
Absolutely, man. And moving on, man, we dropped down a little bit to the women's flyweight. Another one we're going to release a bet on for you guys, man. Going against the grain of the public here from what I can see. I see the public, man, all over Taila Santos, and me and you just don't see it in the girl, man. We actually took a stab on Montana De La Rosa by decision. Like, we're not high on Taila Santos, man. She has potential, but you don't know which one's going to show up. This girl does have good size and stuff for her weight class. She's got a good body kick. And like I said, she is strong. I see her, we've seen Gillian struggle with power on the feet like Macy Barber and stuff. But, man, the Barella loss is one that is it's so hard to look over. Granted, it's your debut. I might give you a pass, but it's bad. For as high as the public is on Santos, you don't need to be losing to Barella. And then fighting Molly McCann, yeah, she looked good, man, but that's Molly McCann. We've seen Gillian look even better. Gillian's game plan, I mean, you know it, man. It's taking the fight to the mat and it's getting you out of there. This girl rarely sees the judges, which is very rare for a flyweight. She trains out of ATT. This girl is 4th in UFC control time, not just in women's division, 4th in UFC history and amount of control time. She knows how to get the fight to the mat and keep it there. She is 2nd in her division in takedown efficiency, only behind the champ Valentina. I see the path to victory for Gillian Robertson. I think Taila Santos is going to have to avoid the takedowns and submissions for 15 minutes, and I don't know if she's going to be able to do that, man.
Yeah, Gillian Robertson, she has that killer instinct when it gets to the ground, and that's where she's going to try and get this fight. We saw in that Courtney Casey fight, all it takes is one slip up for her to kind of get her positional work on the ground and finish you. Yeah. She's looking for that finish, and at 25 years old, we've seen her make constant improvements in her game that have really shown in her fight style. I know, viewing on Instagram, she spent some time in South Carolina with Wonderboy in his camp, and I gotta imagine, like I said, at 25 years old, you're still a sponge. You're still somebody who's really picking up those key things that you can use to be victorious in the UFC. And you talked about Montana De La Rosa was somebody we were willing to take a stab on last week. I think Gillian Robertson's a better fighter than Montana De La Rosa, a little bit more experienced and offers a little bit more problems than Montana De La Rosa did to Santos. Santos is 1-1. You talked about her debut against Mara Barella. That's a tough one to look past. I mean, especially considering Barella's not in the UFC anymore. It's tough to just kind of like go past that. And then, yeah, she looked great against Meatball Molly, but Meatball Molly isn't really the upper echelon of that division. She's made most of her name off of being really tough and gritty and getting those fights in the later rounds. And that's just not something that's super impressive to me. Santos at 16-1. That's quite the impressive resume, and I know that most of her wins come by first round TKO. So, especially in the first round, that's where I see it could be a problem for Robertson if she's not able to kind of get that timing and keep the fight where she needs it to be as far as distance wise. And I say that because of the Macy Barber lost in the first round. Sometimes she can be overwhelmed and she can let that pressure get the best of her. I just don't see that happening in the Santos fight. Like you said, Santos' best path to victory is to keep this on the feet. She does have an 83% takedown defense, which is definitely noteworthy, and it's got to be up there with the greatest in the UFC up until this point. So there is a small sample size, but she doesn't get taken down very easily. As a Brazilian, she's built like a Brazilian. Whenever I was watching her, she really does have like an amazing build at 5'6" and at 125. So I do see her having like maybe the physical advantages over Robertson, but I give Robertson the skill advantage, the game plan that Robertson has. I'd much rather bank on than the Santos game plan.
I'm with you, man, and I think Gillian is a better fighter myself. She has fought twice the level of competition that Santos has seen, period. And man, with Santos, I'm worried she's not going to show up, period. Like straight up, you don't know which one's going to show up. Sometimes the Brazilians change from fight to fight. You don't know which one you're going to get. In her 83% takedown defense with 2 UFC fights and one being Meatball McCann, who stands up the whole time, I don't really know how many takedowns she's had to defend. I think Gillian is going to offer more takedowns and a far more technical side to the wrestling than she has seen. And at like a -110 or -105 or something, man, I love the straight bet on Gillian. I think the odds are there.
We're both going with the Savage here?
Yeah, we're definitely going with Gillian Robertson on Saturday.
Nice. Moving on, we go to the 135-pound division where we have Magic Marlon Moraes, who's 23-7-1, versus Rob Font, who is 17-4. Marlon Moraes, a staple of the 135-pound division, kind of that guy where he's either in line for a title shot or you got to get through him to get a title shot, and has been that way for the past few years. He's only 3-2 in his last 5, but in the last decade, the only people that he's lost to are Rafael Sunsao, which he avenged, Henry Cejudo, which he's Triple C. That's our boy, Henry Cejudo, and Corey Sandhagen, who looked like a world beater last time he was out there. Really offers a unique style that I don't think many people at the 135-pound division can implement, especially at the 5'11" frame that Sandhagen has. That being said, Marlon Moraes, man, he has knocked out some of the best people that the division has to offer. The current title challenger, Aljamain Sterling, he KO'd unconscious, absolutely flatlined him. The Rivera KO, Jimmy Rivera, he got knocked down. I think he got knocked down a couple times before he ended up getting the finishing in that fight. Moraes, as far as his build, he's built like the 135 Francis Ngannou. He's got muscles everywhere, and you have kind of been able to see as the fight progresses, after it gets past that second round, the muscles kind of take a toll. He does kind of get that lactic acid build up and start to slow down, and that's something that I really don't think that he's going to have a problem with in this Rob Font fight. Rob Font, I didn't realize until breaking this fight down that he was a 10 fight UFC veteran. You know, he has some pretty good wins, some of those coming over Ricky Simone or Thomas Almeida, Douglas De Andrade, Sergio Petto, Matt Schnell. Those are all legitimate wins, but when you start to pick apart some of those wins, it's really not as impressive as one might think. You know, Sergio being the 125 or Thomas Almeida kind of being the ghost of himself. And then when Uriah Faber beats Ricky Simone, it's kind of hard to back Ricky anymore. Rob Font, kind of that boxing heavy attack. He uses feints really, really well, whether it's like feinting the back leg kick or you know, pumping the jab out there just to kind of like keep the fighter guessing. Like he obviously wants to keep it on the feet, and he wants to keep you guessing the entire time. And it's worked out for him really, really well. A couple of the fights that he's lost are ones that Marlon Moraes wouldn't lose. And that's kind of just how I'm looking at it. Marlon Moraes, he's lost to Rafael Assunção before, but he came back to avenge that. The Pedro Munoz is awesome. I don't think Marlon Moraes loses to him. John Lineker, another kind of a one-dimensional fighter. If you're going to lose to John Lineker, I think that the John Lineker loss probably is the one that I least like on his resume. That's somebody who you should be able to, if he doesn't catch you initially, you should be able to adjust your fight style to kind of edge out a decision against him. Marlon Moraes, he's just been in the game for a little bit too long, been in that upper echelon of competition, and offers too many paths to victory where Rob Font's only path is on the feet. And I don't think you want to do that in the power striker that Marlon Moraes is.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I know we both like Marlon in this one. He's not on the verge of being cut by no means. But, man, I think he knows he's in a tough spot because he knows the Aldo fight, granted it's a win on his record. He knows a lot of people, and even the company doesn't think that should have gone to him, evident when they gave Aldo the title shot, you know. So you can argue that he's on a 3-fight losing streak. I think he knows the place he's in, and he's... I mean, without a doubt, man, within the last 2 or 3 years, this is the easiest matchup that Marlon Moraes has had. He throws an unreal calf kick, and that is going to cause a boxer who is heavy on that lead leg a ton of troubles. Not only that, but Rob Font is he's a bigger bantamweight. He's a little lankier. The legs are not as thick. It's really going to take some damage when Marlon really starts to let those leg kicks land. He trains out of American Top Team in the Armory in South Florida. I've heard him working on his conditioning and stuff. That being said, you know, Sanhagen and Cejudo, those are 5-round fights. You know, Cejudo really started working the body, started taking a toll on Marlon Moraes, and I think that's something Rob Font will try to have success with, is clinch him up and use some of those knees in the clinch and, you know, maybe work the body with the boxing some to get some energy out, because on a 3-round fight, I don't stress that so much with Marlon. He's got a great left hook. This guy has fought 4 times since the last time Rob Font has fought. Yes, he's a little undersized for 135, but, man, I mean, he's proven he can compete without a doubt. Rob Font, man, coming off he's coming off a year layoff, riding a 2-fight win streak there. He's fought at 145 and 55 in the past. I think he's going to look like the naturally bigger guy a little bit in there, maybe a little bit like Sanhagen did. He trains with Calvin Cater up in New England, the New England cartel, man. And it's evident they train together. Both of them are very, very sharp with their hands and good boxing. He needs to get Marlon working, man, just straight up. He needs to get him grappling. He needs to get him clinched, put him up against the fence, because if he thinks he's going to come out here and have a striking battle and his boxing is going to fare well with Marlon, I think he's mistaken. I really do. He's not been as active, and you know, Marlon's been in there, like I said, 4 times to his last one, and we've seen good things out of Marlon. I think that calf kick is going to be a staple in this fight. I really do. And Rob Font, 33 years old already, man. It's a tricky one for me. It is, because I feel like some people are actually counting Moraes off. You know, the line is definitely moving into Rob Font's favor. I think we're going to let it continue to dip a little bit for us and play Marlon on Saturday.
I couldn't agree more.
Man, moving on to our welterweight division, we have a fight that we're excited about here, man. It's Michel Pereira, who's 24-11, taking on Khaos Williams, who's 11-1. Man, this fight has potential to be legit chaos, you know. both these guys, they do have KO power, and in their recent fights, they've looked pretty good. What I liked about Michel in his last fight against Imadaev is how much more patient he was and how much unnecessary energy he didn't waste. He didn't waste it on his introduction, on his walkout. And you saw him cause issues in the Connolly fight and the Diego fight a little bit, slowing down cardio-wise. He was using unnecessary energy, and you saw when he didn't use that, he looked great on the feet. I think he's going to have a big grappling advantage against Khaos Williams as well. He's got good knees in the clinch. He's got a step-in right hand that is very, very quick. And both of these guys have actually gotten UFC knockouts off of countering a leg kick. They're both really good at countering that. I probably lean toward the cardio edge to Khaos. Khaos has seen the judges' scorecards plenty of times, and he's not proven to gas out like Pereira has proven to us that he can do. Khaos is enjoying himself right now, man. He's came in as a plus 200 and a plus 300 dog, and sitting at both these guys in under 30 seconds, he's looked legit. Much bigger than I originally thought. At 6 foot, I don't know what it was. I just didn't think Khaos Williams was that big for some reason. He has a much longer reach than I thought. He's got power in his hands, and it's just a good straight right followed by a left hook out of when you're exiting. It caught Morono off guard, because the reach was a lot longer than he anticipated. And one thing while watching Khaos that I really, really liked, his lead foot, he does a great job at keeping it on the outside of his opponent so that when they do engage, his head's off center, and they basically run into his right hand for him, man. Nobody's really tested this guy as of late, but I really do think Michel Pereira is better on the feet. He is better on the mat. He's got way more movement. I think he can dance circles around this guy.
Yeah, so Michel Pereira, known for his high-flying theatrics in his fights, and you're right. After watching that Imadaev fight, how can you not be a fan? Yeah. He started really pouring it on and ended up getting the finish in round 3, but was just whooping his ass, was kissing his hand and open palm slapping Zaleem. Like, it was
disrespectful.
Yeah, it was disrespectful for sure. And, in that Pereira fight, I guess kind of, you talked about his patience and everything, and that's something where he really has improved. Coming into the UFC, he had that spotty record with 11 losses, and that was something where I was like, man, if he hasn't figured out what's not working for him now, I don't know if he ever will. Even though he's only 27, it does seem like he's finally taken this UFC experience and really tailored it to fit his fight style.
And taking it a little bit more serious.
Right, right. And, that's kind of the biggest reason why I am fading Khaos Williams here is Michel Pereira, in that Tristan Connolly fight, he's already had to deal with the initial, adrenaline dump whenever you're in the octagon. He's faced that adversity and then had to adjust his fight style accordingly. Khaos Williams, he has less than a minute of UFC fight time in 2 fights. I mean, what's to say that he's gonna? Even though he has been to decision a couple of times in his career, he hasn't been to decision on the UFC stage. Right. So, I really am curious to if he's gonna keep his wits about him, if he's not gonna panic or use too much of his energy to try and get that first round knockout and kind of ride this streak out. I know since his win a month ago, he's been at the UFC PI working his game, and that's something that I do like from Khaos. But I think that he's going to be just a little overwhelmed here against Michel Pereira, who's finally started to find his groove in the UFC, and he gave us a really good fight that last time out, and that might be some recency bias on our end, but I really do think that Michel Pereira is the value side here at minus 117. Impossible for me not to play him. You talked about Khaos Williams kind of being that a big presence inside the octagon. I've never seen Michel Pereira look undersized at 170. Ever. That dude's huge. He is. So I lean towards Pereira pretty confidently, actually.
Yeah, I'm with you, and expect that one to probably be released as well. As it's actually moving in our favor right now, so I think it's something that we should definitely keep an eye on.
Cool. Moving on to the co-main event, we go to the 135-pound division where we see Jose Aldo, who's 28-7, fight Marlon Chito Vera, who's 18-6-1. Jose Aldo, he's been in the UFC as long as I can remember, and was the 145-pound champ for as long as I can remember, up until Conor McGregor came and dethroned him. This move to 135 has been long overdue, in my opinion. I think once the fighters like the Holloways, the Conor McGregor started moving into that 145-pound division, it was clear as day that Jose Aldo was at a size discrepancy with everybody. And, since moving to 135, he's I guess 0-2. Shoot, 0-2 at 135. But in that Marlon Moraes fight, he won that fight.
Yeah, he got a title shot for it.
Yeah, he got the title. Right. So it was a split decision loss on the record, but after rewatching that fight, I'm on the Jose Aldo, or I'm on the Jose Aldo side of that. Yeah. And then Peter Yan, we talked about it, man. That first 4 rounds of that fight, he gave Peter Yan all he wanted. I mean, it was really, really impressive. And then you just saw Peter Yan really in that final round dominate him, and it should have been stopped way earlier. After rewatching that fight, I think Leon Roberts should never ref again. It was awful. I don't know how many unanswered shots. We said it.
Like over 100.
Over 100 unanswered shots. It was just awful. Yeah. So in Jose Aldo's last fight against Peter Yan, one thing that I noticed is he was really like Muay Thai stance heavy, and I mean he's always kind of had that as his game plan. But this one, I mean, his leg was bopping up and down. He looked like Aldo of 5-10 years ago, yeah. And I really do think that he has everything. He still has all the tools. He's only 34 years old, but that's again one of those guys where it's like it's not just a 34-year-old. You're 34 with 10 years of UFC fight experience on you. So even though he is 34 years old, I don't see him slowing up much at all, if any, at the current output that he has. Marlon Vera, he's also, he's been in the UFC for quite a long time, having 15 fights in the UFC, and he's coming off that odd victory to Sean O'Malley. Yeah. He was getting his ass whooped before that, and landed a leg kick that shut off Sean O'Malley's foot or calf. I don't, whatever. His foot wasn't working.
Loss for him.
Right, and I was a little salty about it, and then the way that Sean O'Malley handles that loss, it kind of makes me and you both kind of go down this rabbit hole of not liking Sean O'Malley, finding more reasons why we don't like O'Malley. So I don't even rock his shirt anymore. So I don't know, maybe Marlon Vera just kind of opened my eyes, so thank you for that. But he has kind of fallen short any time that he's had to face the upper echelon or the like solid prodigies of the 135-pound division or 145-pound division in his last loss to Song Yadong. I think a couple more, Davey Grant, John Lineker, Douglas De Andrade, those are all fights that are kind of like, the fights that would just put you over that upper echelon mark that he's fallen short in. And it's like, we talked about this. This is easily his hardest test to date. Yeah. Fighting somebody like Jose Aldo, you have to be on top of your game. And I kind of think that the UFC might be punishing him by giving him Jose Aldo after he beat Sean O'Malley. And, the line sitting at minus 137 for somebody like Jose Aldo against a fighter in Chito Vera that I'm just not too impressed with is extremely tempting. And another one that we have written down that we're probably going to end up playing straight just because of how well he's looked even in his losses.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think Aldo knows the spot that he's in. He needs a win. He is on a 3-fight losing streak on paper. He's taken on an up-and-comer, man, that people seem to really like. His stock got absolutely catapulted after the win over Sean O'Malley. Like you said, though, man, I mean, this is the hardest fight Vera has had in his life. And you can go back a decade, man, and this is the easiest fight that Jose Aldo has had in 10 years. I think it's more of a test of where these guys are at in their career right now, and that's why we're getting these odds. That being said, man, I'm still on the Jose Aldo side. I think this guy has got unreal striking still to this day. He's proven that he can still take a shot, man. He's taken some number of shots from Holloway, from Yan. I mean, it's taken multiple of them to put him away. It's taken an accumulation of a round to get this guy out of there. You're not going to come out here and dust Aldo in one punch like Conor has. That's a rare occurrence. That being said, man, he's 3-5 since losing to Conor. But what I want to state is all 5 of those losses are 5-round fights. We see Jose fade around the late 3rd, the early 4th. And this is a 3-round fight. And a fast starter like Jose Aldo, you're not going to win the first round against him, man. Chito's a slow starter. You see this guy have to kind of, eat some shots and to wake himself up, man, basically. He comes out there and he really does, I guess he, tries to get a read on his opponents or something, but the dude takes some damage in that first round, then starts to try to mix his game together, into that second and third round and stuff. This guy also has a great calf kick, but if you think that this guy is going to come out here and outkick a guy who's made a living off doing it, you're crazy, man. It's just like this main event, in my opinion.
The ex-semi-pro soccer player
Right.
in Jose Aldo. It's not going to happen.
It resembles this main event so much, in my opinion, where you've got a guy who's looked so good as of late, and they're giving him a guy. It's like, here's the top of the division. Can you beat him? Prove yourself. Like you said, it could be a little bit of a punishment for beating O'Malley. Jose Aldo is a big step up and one that, man, 2 years ago in 2018, Marlon Vera was close to fighting for his pink slip and stuff, man. He's lucky to find himself that spot he's in. Yadong, Yule, Nolan Hernandez, Frankie Sainz, man, get out of here. That's not Aldo, and that's not even close to anybody. Jeremy Stevens, Moicano, Volkanovski, Moraes, it's not even close to the people that Jose Aldo has been in there with, man. I like Jose Aldo and a plus 137. Plan on betting him as well, man.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to our main event, man, one that we're super, super excited for. I can't go without noting, I wish this was our co-main. I wish we were getting Leon and Khamzat as our main event to end the year. But I will gladly take this, man. This is a really good fight, and I know you've been a Wonderboy fan for quite some time, man. I know we had a little feud going back to the Woodley and Wonderboy fights and stuff. Wonderboy is coming off a confidence-boosting win, man. After losing 3 of his previous 4, he needed that win over Luque, man. It was a Luque that looked really good, a Luque that had been putting a ton of people away, and he put on an absolute clinic of a performance, man. I've compared, Wonderboy to people like Conor. If you don't mix up your game, if you don't give this guy a takedown to think about, you're in for a very long night, or maybe a very, very short night on your part, man. Wonderboy is not some guy that you think you're going to be able to stand there with, and Geoff Neal makes a living off standing with guys and knocking them out. And I mean, if you think you're going to be more technical than Wonderboy, like I said, man, you're sadly mistaken. He's beaten guys like Mike Perry and Nico Price, Frank Camacho. I mean, these are guys that are literally walk forward to eat shots for a living. And Wonderboy's got maybe the most intelligent striking defense, minus the little slip up to Anthony Pettis, that we've ever seen. He's got a very fast right hand. It reminds me a lot of Holly Holmes. He can step in with it so well. And I mean, people don't see it coming, man. The bouncing around style. He's very quick when he lunges in. He hides his head kick very well. But I do knock the karate style that he has and that Darren Hill has sometimes. The hands are a little bit lower than I like. And, man, once the hips are committed, you got to commit to your shot. You go in with your hips first, and if you miss sometimes, man, Tyron really put him away with the overhand right. Didn't finish him, but put him down twice with it. And it's sometimes Stephen Wonderboy, some of his feints, he feints too hard, and he gets to the point where he's now in the range to be countered. Geoff Neal, man, finished 6 of his last 7 wins. And touching on the Fortis MMA, man, it prepares you for wrestlers and grapplers. There's a ton of fighters there who are always getting ready for a fight that you're always going to have people to work with. But nobody at the level of striking Wonderboy is going to bring you by no means. He's coming off the health scare that pulled him out of his Magny fight, made him go to the hospital. He's never been 5 rounds. I mean, get out of here, man. I bet it at a minus 125, and it looks like I've made a mistake because he's down to an underdog at this point. So I do plan on doubling down on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. This guy is twice the level of striker and fought twice the people, man.
Don't go into a striking match with the best striker in the world and expect to win. Stephen Thompson is that. We've seen him multiple times in his career where they've given him somebody with a striking heavy attack, and they have just been outclassed. Yep. We saw that in the Luque fight. We saw that in the Jorge Masvidal fight that was given to him right after the Woodley loss. I mean,
Darren Till.
the Darren Till one. That was in Liverpool. Darren Till got the nod, but Stephen Wonderboy put him in his place, you know? That Anthony Pettis slip up, you know, like we said, it's Anthony Pettis, and him having the veteran experience that he has, you know, he's going to get those every once in a while.
But make no mistake, he was getting pieced apart.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, Wonderboy, yeah, his striking's amazing, but it's also so unique in the fact that he does utilize that traditional karate stance where he turns his body almost completely sideways. So even when you're fighting him, you have far less of a target than you would against, you know, people like Nico Price or Mike Perry. You know, it really is just like night and day between the competition that they've seen. You know, you talked about Wonderboy kind of keeping his hands low. I like it because he is the counter striker. You know, he does kind of try and like invite you to attack him, try and like push the shot, like try and get the shots out of you so that he can counter it. So I understand why he does that. And then on top of it, Wonderboy, you know, I already mentioned how I don't like talking about out of competition stuff with Greg Hardy, but Wonderboy in the octagon and outside of the octagon, one of the coolest dudes in the world. Man. Yeah, he's the nicest mother effer belt holder for a reason, man. I mean, he really does. He'll put a smile on your face, and like that's somebody I really enjoy watching. I know he's one of my dad's favorite too. He's one that I'm really happy that we can back right here at underdog money. Like that's something that I'm looking to play pretty heavy. I see this as kind of like that Jared Cannonier Robert Whitaker fight where we were on the Robert Whitaker side, just because, man, he's seen it all. He's seen it all. You're gonna tell me that moving on to Geoff Neal, I'll try and give him some good things. You know, he does have a southpaw stance. He has a left hand that shoots out like a piston. I mean, it is a punishing left hand, and one that gave Bilal Muhammad all he could ask for in that fight. That was one where I was watching it and I could not get past that, how quickly he could pull or put out that right hand or left hand and then put it right back in right where it needs to be. Geoff Neal, he really does, outside of Thompson, he has one of the better striking in the 170-pound division and in the UFC in general. Like, that's what he relies on. But we've seen long, lanky strikers beat him in the past. One that I cannot help but mention is that Kevin Holland loss on the regional scene where he got his ass ate up by like a 20-punch combo. And just, it was like the Nate Marquardt, Tyron Woodley beating, you know? I mean, he got punched so many times unanswered. It was like, man, I wonder how he's going to come back after that. One more thing that doesn't really work in Geoff Neal's favor is he is kind of on that smaller end of the division. He only sits at 5'11", and he does have comparable reach to Stephen Thompson, although I think that when we see him in there,
the same way.
Yeah, no. And we're going to see Stephen Thompson, I think he has like, 50% more leg than Geoff Neal does, you know? And I really do see this as just student versus teacher. Teacher's about to whoop his ass, dude. I've got Stephen Thompson in this all day. This is one I'm actually really looking forward to, and hopefully my read's on this one.
Yeah, man, I love being able to get Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at dog money here. I think that's an absolute steal, and one that I'm looking to double down on.
Yeah.
So that finishes up all the fights there for UFC Vegas 17 to end the year, man. But as always, we'll go first with who is your fighter that you want to watch on Saturday?
Yeah, so my fighter to watch is the Prince of War, Greg Hardy.
Yeah.
This is a really big test for him. And outside of the Alexander Volkov fight, this is his biggest test to date. It'll really kind of solidify where he will end up in the heavyweight division and kind of where his future will take him. Yeah,
man, I'm with you. And for me, my fighter to watch is going to be Marlon Moraes. You can argue that this guy's on a 3-fight losing streak right now and really needs a win. And I think he's got an opponent where he can pull that off for. And then, man, what about your fights to watch?
Yeah, so my fights to watch, no, it's kind of cheating, but I do have two. One of them's the Michel Pereira fight and the Khaos Williams. I mean, that's really going to answer a lot of questions. I hope that we can see Michel Pereira, who's kind of that new and improved patient style fighter. And then Khaos Williams, man, if we get to see him out of the first round, that'll really make me happy and kind of give me a little bit more confidence betting on or against him in the future. And then it's the main event. Wonderboy Thompson versus Geoff Neal. I think even if this wasn't the main event, this would be the fight I would be most excited to see. I really hope that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson can just go out there and put on a clinic and show him why he's one of the best to ever do it in the UFC striking wise.
Yes, sir, man. And for me, the fight to watch is going to be actually the co-main event in Marlon Vera and Jose Aldo. I think that has potential to be an absolute dog fight. Both of those guys are tough as nails, can take shots. We've seen Aldo welcome plenty of wars in his lifetime, and I think he's got a guy who's a slow starter, tends to take a few to wake up himself before he gets going. I think that co-main event's going to be a good fight, man. Like I said, man, what a way to end the year. 14 fights to end us. We got a 4-week break after that, which is a bit... doesn't sit with me well after being the only sport to get us through 2020 and the pandemic. Taking a 4-week break. We can't wait to be back, man. Hope you guys catch the fights on Saturday. Keep an eye out for the bets that we're going to be released. I know we're up 30 units since July, man, and looking to cap off the year with even more profit.
100%. I know that we won't be here for 4 weeks, but I imagine that we will have at least one video come out, hopefully giving away this right here, maybe doing a couple of other things, but we're looking at this point on to really make some changes to the podcast as far as how it looks to you guys on the screen, and moving forward, we have some big things planned for next year. So I'm looking forward to next year, and maybe this is a much needed little break right here.
Absolutely, man. And just starting here for the past couple months, we look, and we're hoping for 2021 to be a big year for us.
100%.
Hope you guys are continuing to make money with us. Take care.
Peace.